At 4:12 in the morning, Ryan Carter made a choice that would destroy his career and save his life. While his daughter lay burning with fever in the next room, whispering through cracked lips that she didn't want to bother him because his work was more important, he stared at the laptop screen glowing in the dark and realized he'd become exactly the kind of father he swore he'd never be. What happened next would cost him everything he'd worked for, but bring him something he didn't know he was missing. If you want to see how one impossible decision changed everything, stay until the end. And hey, drop a like and comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Now let's go back to where it all started. The kitchen light buzzed like a dying insect. Ryan Carter sat hunched over his laptop at 4:12 a.m., the blue glow painting shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there 6 months ago. His coffee had gone cold an hour before. He didn't notice. The code on his screen blurred and sharpened, blurred again. Somewhere in those lines was the answer to a problem that had consumed the last 72 hours of his life. He rubbed his face hard enough to hurt. The apartment was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of old pipes. Studio apartment. $1,200 a month. Too small for 2 people, really, but it was what he could afford after the divorce. After everything. His phone lit up. Another message from Derek, his team lead. "You close? We're presenting at 9. Ryan didn't respond. He'd stopped responding 2 hours ago. His fingers moved across the keyboard. Delete, rewrite, test, fail. The system integration wasn't working. It should have been simple. Connect the API, authenticate, pull the data. Except nothing about his job had been simple in months. The company had downsized twice this year. Everyone left standing was doing the work of 3 people. Ryan was doing the work of 4. He told himself it was temporary. He told himself a lot of things. A sound from the bedroom made him freeze, soft, almost a whimper. Ryan pushed back from the table, the chair scraping loud in the silence. He crossed the small living room in 4 steps and opened the bedroom door slowly. The nightlight cast everything in soft orange. Ellie was curled on her side, blankets tangled around her legs. Her face was flushed. Even from the doorway, he could see the sheen of sweat on her forehead. "Hey, Bug," he whispered. She stirred but didn't wake. He stepped closer, pressed the back of his hand to her forehead. Heat. Not warm. Hot. His stomach dropped. Ryan knelt beside the bed, brushing damp hair from her face. "Ellie?" Her eyes opened slowly, unfocused. "Dad?" "Yeah, baby. It's me." He kept his voice calm even though his heart was hammering. "How do you feel?" "Tired." Her voice was so small. "My head hurts." "Why didn't you wake me up?" She blinked at him, confused. "You were working." "Ellie, you said not to bother you. You said your work was important." The words hit him like a slap. He had said that 2 nights ago when she'd asked him to read her a story and he'd been drowning in a different crisis. He'd said it without thinking, without looking at her face. "Bug, listen to me." He cupped her cheek gently. "You're always more important than work. Always. You hear me?" She nodded, but he wasn't sure she believed him. Hell, he wasn't sure he believed himself anymore. Ryan found the thermometer in the bathroom cabinet behind a bottle of expired cough syrup and a tangle of hair ties. His hands shook slightly as he slid it under her tongue. 102.4. Not terrible. Not great. He gave her children's Tylenol and a cup of water, watched her swallow obediently. She didn't complain. She never complained. 6 years old and she'd already learned not to ask for too much. That realization made something crack inside his chest. "Try to sleep, okay?" He tucked the blankets around her. "I'll be right outside if you need me." "Okay, Dad." He stood there watching her breathe for longer than he should have. Then he closed the door and went back to the kitchen. The laptop was still glowing. Derek had sent 3 more messages. Ryan stared at the screen, at the code that refused to cooperate, at the deadline that wouldn't bend. His daughter was sick, burning up in the next room. And here he was, debugging an API integration at 4 in the morning because his boss couldn't plan a project timeline to save his life. He thought about his ex-wife, Lauren, the way she'd looked at him the day she'd said she was done. Not angry, just tired. Exhausted, really. Like she'd been holding up something heavy for too long and finally had to let it drop. "You're not here, Ryan," she'd said. "Even when you're here, you're not here." She'd been right. She'd taken the house. He'd taken Ellie. That had been the deal. Lauren got to start over clean. Ryan got to prove he could do better. So far, he was failing spectacularly. His phone rang. Derek's name flashed on the screen. Ryan let it ring once, twice, then he answered. Yeah. Jesus, finally. Where are we at? Still working on it. Ryan, man, we present in 4 hours. 4 hours. Please tell me you're close. I'm close. He wasn't close. Can you have something testable by 7? I can push the meeting to 9:30, but that's the absolute latest. Melissa's already breathing down my neck. Melissa, their VP. The woman who smiled like a shark and spoke in bullet points. I'll have something, Ryan said. You're a lifesaver, seriously. The call ended. Ryan set the phone down carefully, like it might explode if he moved too fast. He looked at the closed bedroom door, at the laptop, at his hands, which suddenly felt like they belonged to someone else. He'd been doing this for 6 months, running himself into the ground, telling himself it was for Ellie, for their future, telling himself it mattered. But Ellie was in the next room with a fever, believing her father's work was more important than she was. And maybe it had been. Maybe that was the worst part. Ryan closed the laptop. The click echoed in the quiet kitchen. He picked up his phone and opened his email, found the draft he'd written 3 times and deleted twice, stared at it for a long moment. Then he changed the subject line to something simple. Resignation. Effective immediately. He didn't write much. Just a few lines. Professional, polite, final. Derek, effective immediately. I'm resigning from my position. I won't be completing the current project. I know this creates problems and I'm sorry for that, but I can't do this anymore. Ryan. He hit send before he could change his mind. The whoosh of the email going out sounded impossibly loud. Ryan sat there in the dark, waiting to feel something. Panic, maybe. Regret. But all he felt was tired. Bone-deep tired. The kind that sleep couldn't fix. His phone started ringing immediately. Derek's name again. Ryan turned it off. He stood, legs stiff from sitting too long, and walked back to the bedroom. Ellie was asleep, her breathing soft and even. The fever medication was working. Her face looked less flushed. Ryan lay down on the floor beside her bed, one arm stretched up so his fingers could rest near her hand. He'd figure out the rest tomorrow. Tonight, he was just going to be here. For the first time in months, that felt like enough. When morning came, it came too bright and too fast. Ryan woke to sunlight slicing through the blinds, and Ellie sitting up in bed, looking down at him with wide eyes. Dad, why are you on the floor? He blinked, neck protesting as he sat up. Wanted to make sure you were okay. I feel better. She did look better. The flush was gone. Her eyes were clearer. Good. He pushed himself to his feet, every joint crackling. You hungry? She nodded. They ate cereal together at the small kitchen table. Ellie chattered about a dream she'd had involving a purple dinosaur and a rocket ship. Ryan listened, actually listened, and realized he couldn't remember the last time he'd done this. Just sat with her, no laptop open, no phone in his hand. It felt strange, good strange. His phone was still off. He left it that way. After breakfast, he let Ellie watch cartoons while he cleaned the apartment. It wasn't dirty exactly, but it wasn't clean either. Dishes in the sink, laundry piled on the couch, the kind of mess that accumulates when you're always running but never arriving. He was folding Ellie's shirts when someone knocked on the door. Ryan frowned. He wasn't expecting anyone. Through the peephole, he saw a woman he didn't recognize. Late 20s, maybe. Dark hair pulled back, dressed in a blazer and jeans that somehow made her look both professional and approachable. She held a leather portfolio under one arm. He opened the door but left the chain on. Can I help you? Ryan Carter? Her voice was confident without being aggressive. Who's asking? Sophie Bennett. She shifted the portfolio. I know this is unexpected. Can I come in? It'll take 10 minutes, maybe less. I don't know who you are. I know. That's part of why I'm here. She glanced past him into the apartment. Please. I wouldn't have come if it wasn't important. There was something in her expression that made him hesitate. Not desperation exactly, more like determination, the kind of look people got when they'd run out of other options. Against his better judgment, Ryan unhooked the chain and opened the door. Sophie stepped inside, taking in the apartment in one quick sweep. Her gaze lingered on Ellie, who was watching from the couch with curious eyes, then returned to Ryan. "Thank you," Sophie said. "You've got 10 minutes." "Fair enough." She set the portfolio on the kitchen table. "I'm the founder of Apex Solutions. We're a tech company focused on cloud-based project management tools. We launched 18 months ago, and we've grown faster than we expected." Ryan crossed his arms. "Congratulations." "What does that have to do with me? Our system is failing." She said it flatly, no sugarcoating. "We're hemorrhaging data integrity across 3 separate integrations. It started 2 weeks ago. Small errors. Now it's cascading. If we don't fix it in the next 72 hours, we lose our biggest client. And if we lose them, we lose everything. You need a developer. I need the right developer." Sophie pulled a tablet from her portfolio, swiped through screens. "Your work at Stratacorp caught my attention. The API framework you built cut their processing time by 40%. That's not incremental improvement. That's architecture-level thinking." Ryan blinked. "How do you—" "I did my research." She met his eyes. "I know you left Stratacorp 6 months ago. I know you've been freelancing, taking contracts where you can find them. And I know—" She paused. "I know you resigned from your current position about 5 hours ago." His jaw tightened. "You've been digging." "I've been desperate." She didn't look away. "My company is on fire, Mr. Carter. I need someone who can think 3 moves ahead and fix problems that shouldn't exist. You can do that. I've seen your code." "I'm not interested." "You haven't heard my offer." "Doesn't matter." Sophie tilted her head slightly. "You quit your job this morning because you were working yourself to death and it was costing you time with your daughter. I respect that. What I'm offering isn't the same trap. Every job says that. Most jobs lie." She set the tablet down. "I'm not offering you 70-hour weeks. I'm offering you a consulting contract, short term. You work on this one problem. If you solve it, I'll pay you 3 times what you were making. If you don't, you walk away and I don't waste your time again." Ryan's arms were still crossed, but something in his stance had shifted. 3 times? 3 times your last salary. 1 payment, delivered the moment the problem is fixed. She pulled a folder from the portfolio and handed it to him. "Contract terms, review it. Talk to a lawyer if you want. I'm not trying to trap you. I'm trying to save my company." He took the folder but didn't open it. "Why me? There are 1,000 developers in this city." "Because you don't just write code. You understand systems. You see patterns." Sophie's expression softened slightly. "And because your daughter is watching cartoons on that couch, and I can see you checking on her every 30 seconds. You know what matters. People who know what matters don't cut corners." Ryan glanced at Ellie. She was absorbed in the TV, oblivious to the conversation. "I have one condition," he said. "Name it. My daughter comes first. Always. If she needs me, I drop everything. No exceptions." Sophie didn't hesitate. "Agreed." "I mean it." "So do I." She extended her hand. "Do we have a deal?" Ryan looked at her hand, at the folder, at Ellie. He just walked away from one job because it was consuming him. Taking another one felt reckless, stupid even. But the number in that contract would keep them stable for months. And if Sophie was telling the truth about the timeline, it wouldn't be a long-term commitment. He opened the folder, scanned the terms quickly. The payment amount made his chest tighten. It was more than he'd made in 6 months at his last job. 72 hours, he said. "That's the window?" "That's the window." "And if I can't fix it?" "Then we both lose." Sophie's hand was still extended. "But I don't think you will." Ryan shook her hand. Her grip was firm, steady. "When do we start?" he asked. "Now would be good." Mutt. Sophie's office was nothing like Ryan expected. He'd imagined glass walls and minimalist furniture, the kind of tech bro aesthetic that prioritized looking successful over being functional. Instead, Sophie's company occupied the second floor of a converted warehouse in a neighborhood that was trying very hard to gentrify, but hadn't quite made it. The space was open, brick walls exposed, desks scattered in clusters that suggested collaboration more than hierarchy. People looked up as Sophie walked in, Ryan trailing behind with Ellie's hand in his. He'd grabbed her tablet and a backpack full of snacks and coloring books. Sophie had said it was fine to bring her. She'd better have meant it. Conference room, Sophie said, nodding toward a glass-walled space in the corner. You can set up there. There's a couch if she needs to rest. Ellie tugged Ryan's hand. Is this your new job? Something like that, Bug. It's big. Yeah. Sophie led them to the conference room and closed the door behind them. The space was dominated by a long table covered in laptops, notepads, and scattered coffee cups. A whiteboard on the far wall was filled with diagrams that made Ryan's head hurt just looking at them. This is the situation, Sophie said, pulling up a screen on the wall-mounted monitor. 3 weeks ago, our primary integration with CloudSync started throwing intermittent errors. Data uploads would succeed, but the metadata wouldn't sync. We patched it. 2 days later, a different integration failed. Then another. Now all three are unstable. Ryan set Ellie up on the couch with her tablet and headphones, then moved to the table. Show me the logs. Sophie handed him a laptop. Everything's here? Error logs? System diagnostics? Recent code commits? Ryan scanned the data, fingers moving quickly. The errors weren't random. There was a pattern, faint but there, like watching ripples spread across water and trying to find the stone that started them. Who's been working on this? He asked. My lead developer, Marcus, and his team. Where's Marcus now? Taking a break. He's been here for 48 hours straight. I sent him home before he collapsed. Ryan nodded absently, already absorbed in the code. He pulled up the integration framework, traced the data flow from endpoint to endpoint. The architecture was solid. Whoever built this knew what they were doing, but something was off. A mismatch in the API versioning, maybe. Or a timing issue with the authentication tokens. The first thing he noticed was the error frequency. It wasn't consistent. Some days there were dozens of failures. Other days, just a handful. That ruled out a simple configuration problem. If the code was broken, it would break the same way every time, unless someone was making it break. Ryan pulled up the commit history, scrolled through weeks of changes. Most were routine, bug fixes, feature additions, nothing that should have caused a cascading failure across multiple integrations. But then he saw it, a configuration file, modified 3 weeks ago. The timestamp matched the first error in the logs. He opened the file, stared at the code. Someone had changed the token refresh interval, dropped it from 60 seconds to 30. It was a tiny change, the kind of thing that would slip past code review if you weren't looking for it. Got something? Ryan said. Sophie looked up from her own laptop. What? This. He turned the screen. Someone modified the authentication token refresh rate, cut it in half. Sophie leaned in, reading quickly. Why would anyone do that? That's the question. Is it causing the failures? Probably. Ryan pulled up a network trace, watched the data flow through the system. The token expires before the sync completes. The handshake fails midstream. Data goes through, metadata doesn't. That's why you're seeing partial failures instead of complete crashes. Can you fix it? Yeah, but that's not the point. He looked at her. This wasn't an accident. Someone changed this on purpose. Sophie's expression went cold. Show me who. Ryan pulled up the file metadata. The change had been committed at 2:17 a.m. 3 weeks ago. The username was there, clear as day, Marcus D. Sophie stared at the screen, said nothing. Your lead developer, Ryan said quietly. Marcus wouldn't... She stopped, pressed her lips together. He's been with me since the beginning. Maybe he made a mistake. At 2 in the morning, without telling anyone? Sophie shook her head. No. If Marcus touched that file, he had a reason. Then we need to ask him. Sophie pulled out her phone, dialed, waited. No answer. She tried again. Still nothing. Where does he live? Ryan asked. About 20 minutes from here. Why? Because if he sabotaged your system, we need to know why. And we need to know now. Sophie looked like she wanted to argue. But she didn't. She just grabbed her keys. I'll drive, she said. Marcus lived in a small house on the edge of the city, the kind of neighborhood where lawns were brown and chain-link fences separated tiny yards. Sophie parked on the street. The house was dark. Stay here, she told Ryan. Not a chance. This is my mess. And I'm part of it now. Ryan glanced back at Ellie, asleep in the back seat. 10 minutes. Then we're leaving whether we get answers or not. Sophie nodded. They walked to the front door together. Sophie knocked, waited, knocked again, harder. The door opened a crack. Marcus looked out, eyes bloodshot and wary. He was younger than Ryan expected, mid-20s at most, wearing sweatpants and a wrinkled t-shirt that said something about JavaScript. Sophie? He blinked like he wasn't sure she was real. What are you doing here? We need to talk. I'm off the clock. I don't care. Sophie's voice was flat, hard. Let us in, Marcus. Who's us? Ryan stepped into view. The guy trying to figure out why your system is falling apart. Marcus's face went pale. I don't know what you're... 3 weeks ago, Sophie interrupted. 2:17 a.m. You modified the authentication token refresh interval. Why? I didn't... Don't lie to me. Sophie's voice cracked like a whip. Your username is on the commit. Just tell me why. Marcus looked between them. Then he stepped back and opened the door wider. They followed him inside. The house was a mess. Pizza boxes stacked on the coffee table. Empty energy drink cans everywhere. The air smelled stale. Marcus sank onto the couch, head in his hands. I didn't mean for it to go this far. What does that mean? Ryan asked. Marcus's voice was shaking. I needed more time. Time for what? To finish the project. He looked up at Sophie. You've been pushing so hard. New features every week. The team was drowning. I thought if I could slow things down just a little, we'd have breathing room. Sophie's expression was ice. So you sabotaged our own system. I didn't think it would cascade like this. I just wanted to buy us a few days. Then I'd fix it and no one would know. Except it didn't work like that. No. Marcus's hands were shaking. It got worse. I tried to fix it, but every patch made it worse. And then you brought in... He gestured at Ryan. Him. I knew you'd figure it out. You're damn right we figured it out. Sophie's voice was quiet now. Dangerous. Do you have any idea what you've done? We're 48 hours from losing Titan Corp. If that happens, the company folds. Everyone loses their job, including you. I know. Then why didn't you come to me? Because you wouldn't have listened. Marcus's voice rose. You never listen. It's always about growth, about impressing investors. You don't care that we're burning out. That's not fair. Isn't it? Marcus stood up. When's the last time you asked how we were doing? Really asked? Sophie opened her mouth, closed it. Ryan watched the exchange, recognizing something in it. The exhaustion, the resentment, the feeling of being pushed past the breaking point while someone else called the shots. How long have you been working 90-hour weeks? Ryan asked quietly. Marcus looked at him. 6 months. Maybe more. And you figured if the system broke, Sophie would have to slow down. Yeah. Except she didn't slow down. She just worked harder. Marcus sat back down. Yeah. Sophie was staring at the floor. Her jaw was tight. I didn't know it was that bad. You didn't ask. I should have. The room went quiet. Ryan cleared his throat. Can you undo the changes you made? Marcus nodded. I can walk you through it. It'll take a few hours, but we can stabilize everything. Then let's do that. Ryan looked at Sophie. We fix the system first. Everything else comes after. Sophie met his eyes, nodded slowly. Marcus grabbed his laptop and they headed back to the car. Ellie was still asleep in the back seat. Ryan slid in beside her, pulling her head gently onto his shoulder. She stirred but didn't wake. Sophie drove in silence. In the rearview mirror, Ryan could see Marcus staring out the window, looking like he wanted to disappear. Nobody spoke until they reached the office. The next 12 hours blurred together. Marcus walked Ryan through every change he'd made. Some were easy to reverse. Others had created dependencies that required careful untangling. It was delicate work. One wrong move and the whole system could implode. Sophie brought food, coffee, energy drinks. She didn't hover, but she didn't leave either. Ellie woke up around dinner time. Ryan took a break, sat with her while she ate pizza and colored on the conference room table. She didn't complain, just asked when they were going home. Soon, Bug, he said. You keep saying that. I know. I'm sorry. She shrugged and went back to her coloring. Ryan felt the weight of that shrug, the casual acceptance that this was just how things were. He went back to work. By midnight, they'd stabilized 2 of the 3 integrations. The third was proving stubborn. The code kept throwing errors that didn't make sense. "There's something else here," Ryan muttered, scrolling through lines of configuration. "Something Marcus didn't change." Marcus leaned over his shoulder. "What do you mean?" "This error. It's not related to the token refresh. It's deeper. In the data pipeline itself." "That's impossible. I've checked that code 100 times." Ryan pulled up the pipeline architecture, traced the data flow from source to destination, and then he saw it. A routing error. Old code that should have been deprecated months ago but was still active, creating a conflict with the new integration layer. "When did you launch the Cloud Sync integration?" Ryan asked. 3 months ago, Sophie said from across the room. "And this pipeline code is older than that." "Yeah, that's legacy stuff from our first version." "It's still running." Sophie came over, looked at the screen. "That shouldn't be active." "But it is. And it's creating a race condition every time you try to sync data." Ryan highlighted the conflicting routes. "Your new integration and the old one are fighting for the same resources." Marcus swore under his breath. "How did we miss that?" "Because you were focused on the new stuff." Ryan looked at Sophie. "You've been building so fast you didn't clean up the old foundation." Sophie leaned against the table. "Can we fix it?" "We can deprecate the old pipeline, route everything through the new integration. It'll take a few hours, but it should work." "Will it hold?" "If we do it right." Sophie nodded. "Then let's do it right." They worked through the night. Ryan rewrote the routing logic while Marcus updated the integration endpoints. Sophie coordinated with her infrastructure team, making sure the servers could handle the transition. By the time the sun started rising, they'd deployed the fix. Ryan ran the first test. The data flowed clean. No errors, no dropped packets. The metadata synced perfectly. He ran it again, same result. Marcus watched the monitor, barely breathing. "Is it working?" "Run a full cycle," Ryan said. "Let's make sure." They triggered a complete data sync. Thousands of records flowing through the system, every integration firing in sequence. The progress bar crawled across the screen. 90%, 95%, 100%. Success. Marcus let out a breath that sounded like he'd been holding it for weeks. Sophie closed her eyes, shoulders sagging. Ryan leaned back in his chair, exhaustion hitting him like a wave. It was done. The system was stable. Sophie's company wasn't going to implode. "We should celebrate," Marcus said weakly. "We should sleep," Ryan countered. Sophie laughed. It was a tired sound, but genuine. "We should do both." Ryan stood up, joints protesting. Ellie was asleep on the couch again, curled up under his jacket. He gathered her gently, cradling her against his chest. "I'll send the payment this morning," Sophie said. "Appreciate it." "Ryan," she stepped closer. "Thank you. For everything." "Just doing the job." "You did more than that." She glanced at Marcus, who was shutting down his laptop with shaking hands. "You gave me a wake-up call." "Yeah, well, someone needed to." Sophie smiled slightly. "Marcus is going on leave, 2 weeks minimum, and when he gets back, we're restructuring how we operate." "Good." "I mean it. No more 90-hour weeks, no more burning people out." She looked at Ryan. "You were right about what matters." Ryan shifted Ellie's weight, settling her more comfortably against his shoulder. "I'm still figuring that out myself." "You're doing better than you think." He didn't know what to say to that. Sophie walked him to the door. The office was quiet. Most of the team had gone home hours ago. "If you ever need work," she said, "real work, not emergency firefighting, call me." "I'll keep that in mind." "I'm serious. People who see systems the way you do are rare." Ryan paused at the door. "People who build companies the way you're trying to are rare too." Sophie's expression softened. "Trying being the key word." "Yeah, but you're trying. That counts." He left before she could respond. The morning air was cold and sharp. Ryan carried Ellie to his car, buckled her into the back seat. She didn't wake up. He sat in the driver's seat for a long moment, just breathing. 72 hours ago, he'd been on the floor of his apartment, watching his daughter sleep and wondering how he'd gotten so lost. Now, he had money in the bank. A daughter who'd spent the night with him instead of alone. and the quiet, steady knowledge that he'd made the right choice. Ryan started the car and drove home. The city was waking up around him, streetlights flickering off, early morning joggers on the sidewalks, the world turning like it always did. But something in Ryan had shifted. He'd walked away from the trap once. He could do it again if he had to. And more importantly, he knew what he was walking toward. Ellie stirred in the back seat. "Dad? Yeah, Bug? Are we going home now?" "Yeah, we're going home." "Good." She yawned. "Can we have pancakes?" Ryan smiled. "Yeah, we can have pancakes." She settled back into sleep. Ryan kept driving, the morning light growing stronger, washing everything in gold. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he could breathe. The pancakes were lopsided and slightly burned around the edges, but Ellie didn't seem to notice. She drowned them in syrup and ate with the single-minded focus of someone who'd been living on pizza and granola bars for 24 hours. Ryan sat across from her, nursing his third cup of coffee and feeling the weight of exhaustion settle into his bones. He'd slept maybe 2 hours after they got home, just enough to take the edge off, but not enough to actually function. His body felt like it belonged to someone else. "These are good, Dad," Ellie said through a mouthful of pancake. "Don't talk with your mouth full." She swallowed, grinning. "These are good." "Thanks, Bug." She took another bite, syrup dripping down her chin. Ryan reached over with a napkin, wiped it away. She wrinkled her nose but let him. The apartment felt different in the morning light, quieter somehow, less cramped. Or maybe that was just him. Maybe everything felt different when you weren't drowning. His phone buzzed on the counter. He'd turned it back on an hour ago, bracing for the flood of angry messages from Derek and the company. But there was nothing, just a notification from his bank. Payment received. Ryan opened the app, stared at the number. It was real. Sophie had sent the full amount exactly as promised. He set the phone down carefully, like it might disappear if he moved too fast. "Dad, can we go to the park today?" Ryan looked up. Ellie was watching him with bright eyes, fork suspended halfway to her mouth. "The park? You said we could go when you were done working. Are you done working?" He thought about that. About the fact that he didn't have a job to go back to. No deadlines looming. No project meetings or crisis calls or any of the 1,000 things that had consumed every waking moment for the past 6 months. "Yeah," he said slowly. "Yeah, I'm done working." "So we can go?" "We can go." Ellie bounced in her seat, nearly knocking over her orange juice. Ryan caught it just in time. They finished breakfast and got dressed. Ryan pulled on jeans and a hoodie that had seen better days. Ellie insisted on wearing her favorite purple jacket, even though it was too warm for it. He didn't argue. The park was a 15-minute walk from their apartment. It wasn't much. A playground with rusty swings and a slide that had been there since Ryan was a kid. A patch of brown grass. A few benches where old men played chess. But it was quiet, and Ellie loved it. She ran ahead as soon as they got there, making a beeline for the swings. Ryan followed at a slower pace, settling onto a bench with a clear view of the playground. He watched her pump her legs, gaining height with each swing. Her hair flew behind her, catching the sunlight. She was laughing. When was the last time he'd heard her laugh like that? Ryan pulled out his phone, then put it away. There was nothing he needed to check. No emails that couldn't wait. No emergencies that required his immediate attention. It felt strange, almost uncomfortable. A shadow fell across the bench. Ryan looked up, squinting against the sun. Sophie stood there, hands in her pockets, looking as tired as he felt. "Hey," she said. "Hey." He straightened, surprised. "What are you doing here?" "Looking for you." "How did you—" "You mentioned this park once, when we were working. Said Ellie liked the swings." Sophie nodded toward the playground. "Figured I'd take a chance." Ryan didn't remember mentioning that. But then again, he didn't remember much from the last 72 hours. It had all blurred together into one long stretch of code and coffee. "Did you sleep?" he asked. "A little." Sophie sat down on the other end of the bench, leaving space between them. "You?" "Same." They sat in silence for a moment, watching Ellie swing higher and higher. "I wanted to thank you again," Sophie said. "Properly this time, without half my team hovering. You already thanked me and paid me. I know. But I meant what I said last night, about calling if you need work." Ryan glanced at her. "I thought that was just something people say." "I don't say things I don't mean." Sophie turned to face him. I'm serious. The way you diagnosed that problem, the way you handled Marcus, that's not just technical skill. That's leadership. I'm not a leader. You led last night, whether you meant to or not. Ryan didn't know what to say to that. He looked back at the playground. Ellie had moved to the slide now, climbing up and sliding down in an endless loop. What happened with Marcus? He asked. After we left. Sophie sighed. I sent him home. Told him to take 2 weeks off, minimum. When he comes back, we're having a long conversation about workload and expectations. You think he'll stay? I don't know, maybe. She rubbed her face. I didn't realize how bad it had gotten. I thought everyone was handling it because no one complained. People don't complain when they're afraid of losing their jobs. I know that now. Sophie's voice was quiet. I was so focused on growing the company, on proving we could succeed, that I stopped paying attention to the people making it happen. Ryan understood that. He'd done the same thing, in his own way. Focused so hard on providing for Ellie that he'd forgotten to actually be there for her. So what are you going to do? He asked. Change things. Slow down. Hire more people so the team isn't stretched so thin. Sophie leaned back against the bench. It's going to cost money we don't really have, but if I don't do it, there won't be a company to save. That's smart. It's necessary. There's a difference. Ellie ran over, breathless and grinning. Dad, did you see me? I went down the slide backwards. I saw, Bug. That was pretty cool. Can I go on the monkey bars? Go ahead. She sprinted off again, all energy and motion. Sophie watched her go. She's sweet. Yeah, she is. How old? 6. That's a good age. Ryan smiled slightly. She has her moments. They lapsed into silence again. It wasn't uncomfortable, exactly. Just present. 2 people sitting on a bench, watching a kid play. Can I ask you something? Sophie said after a while. Sure. Why did you really quit your job? The one before mine? Ryan considered the question. The real answer was complicated. Messy. But Sophie had been honest with him about her own failures. He figured he owed her the same. I was turning into someone I didn't recognize, he said finally. Someone who prioritized deadlines over his daughter. Someone who thought providing was the same as being present. And you realized that wasn't true. Yeah, a little too late, maybe. But yeah. Sophie nodded slowly. I think I'm figuring out the same thing, just with a company instead of a kid. It's not too late for you either. How do you know? Because you're here, asking questions. Most people don't do that until it's already over. Sophie looked at him, something shifting in her expression. You're pretty insightful for someone who claims not to be a leader. I'm just a guy who screwed up and is trying to do better. That's what makes you a leader. Before Ryan could respond, his phone rang. He pulled it out, checked the screen. Unknown number. He answered anyway. Hello? Mr. Carter? This is Janet Reeves from Titan Corp. Ryan's stomach dropped. Titan Corp, Sophie's biggest client, the one they'd been racing to save. Yes? I'm calling about the system integration issues we've been experiencing. I wanted to let you know that we ran our morning sync and everything went through perfectly. No errors, no data loss. Whatever you did, it worked. Ryan glanced at Sophie, who was watching him with raised eyebrows. That's good to hear, he said carefully. More than good. We were about to pull our contract. This saves us a lot of headache. Janet paused. I'd like to set up a meeting with you and Ms. Bennett to discuss expanding our partnership. Are you available next week? Ryan stopped, looked at Sophie, covered the phone. Titan Corp wants a meeting to expand the partnership. Sophie's eyes went wide. Ryan uncovered the phone. Can you hold for just a second? Of course. He muted the call, turned to Sophie. What do you want me to say? Say yes. Absolutely say yes. They think I work for you. So? You do. Consulting counts. Sophie, please. She leaned forward. I need you in that meeting. They trust you. And honestly, I trust you. Ryan looked at her, at the desperation and hope mixing in her expression, at the woman who'd shown up at his apartment with an impossible problem and somehow convinced him to care about solving it. Okay, he said, but we're negotiating my rate after this. Sophie grinned. Deal. Ryan unmuted the call. Miss Reeves? Next week works. Send the details to Sophie Bennett and we'll be there. Excellent. I'll have my assistant reach out. Thank you, Mr. Carter. The call ended. Ryan and Sophie looked at each other. Did that just happen? Sophie asked. I think so. We didn't just save the company. We might have actually grown it. Might have. Sophie laughed, the sound bright and surprised. I need a drink. It's 10 in the morning. I need coffee then. Come on, there's a place 2 blocks from here. My treat. Ryan hesitated, glancing at Ellie. She can come, Sophie added quickly. They have hot chocolate and cookies. Ellie materialized at Ryan's elbow like she'd been summoned. Did someone say cookies? Yeah, Bug, someone said cookies. Can we go? Ryan looked between his daughter and Sophie, feeling something shift in his chest. A loosening. A sense that maybe, just maybe, things were starting to move in the right direction. Yeah, he said. We can go. The coffee shop was small and crowded, the kind of place that smelled like espresso and cinnamon and had mismatched furniture that somehow worked. Sophie ordered a double shot of something complicated. Ryan got black coffee. Ellie got hot chocolate with extra whipped cream and a chocolate chip cookie the size of her hand. They found a table in the corner, tucked away from the main flow of traffic. Ellie attacked her cookie with enthusiasm, getting crumbs everywhere. Ryan didn't bother trying to stop her. So, Sophie said, wrapping her hands around her cup, what's next for you? What do you mean? You quit your job. You just finished a consulting gig. You've got money in the bank. What are you going to do? Ryan considered that. 24 hours ago, he would have said he had no idea. But sitting here, watching Ellie devour her cookie while Sophie looked at him with genuine curiosity, he realized he did know. Take some time, he said. Figure out what kind of work actually fits my life instead of the other way around. That's smart. It's terrifying. Most smart things are. Ryan smiled slightly. What about you? What's next? Restructure the company, hire more people, try not to burn everyone out. Sophie took a sip of her coffee. And apologize to Marcus properly, not just with words, with actual changes. Think he'll forgive you? I don't know, but I have to try. Ellie looked up from her cookie, whipped cream on her nose. Are you Dad's boss? Sophie blinked. Sort of. We work together. He worked a lot at his old job. I didn't like it. The statement hung in the air. Ryan felt his chest tighten. Ellie. But now he makes pancakes, she continued, completely oblivious to the weight of her words. So it's better? Sophie's expression softened. Pancakes are important. They are. Ellie nodded seriously. Especially with syrup. Especially with syrup, Sophie agreed. Ryan watched the exchange, something warm spreading through his chest. Sophie was talking to Ellie like she mattered. Not like a kid to be tolerated, but like a person whose opinions were worth hearing. It was such a small thing. But it mattered. They stayed at the coffee shop longer than Ryan intended. Sophie and Ellie started a game involving sugar packets and a napkin dispenser that Ryan didn't fully understand, but made Ellie laugh until she got the hiccups. He sat back, drinking his coffee, watching them. When they finally left, the sun was higher, and the day felt fully formed. Sophie walked them back to the park. Thank you, Ryan said when they reached the playground. For the coffee and for everything else. Thank you for saving my company. Just doing the job? Sophie smiled. You keep saying that. Because it's true. Maybe. She glanced at Ellie, who was already running back to the swings. But I think it was more than that. Before Ryan could respond, her phone buzzed. She checked it, frowned. I need to take this. It's the office. Go ahead. Sophie stepped away, phone to her ear. Ryan watched her pace, her expression shifting from neutral to concerned to something harder. When she came back, she looked stressed. Problem? Ryan asked. Maybe. That was our infrastructure manager. The system's running fine, but he found something weird in the server logs. Weird how? Access attempts from an IP address he doesn't recognize. It happened 3 times last night, right around when we deployed the fix. Ryan's instincts prickled. Could be automated scripts, bots probing for vulnerabilities. That's what he thought, but the timing's too specific, like someone was watching. Where's the IP coming from? That's the thing. It's masked, routed through a VPN. Sophie ran a hand through her hair. It's probably nothing. But after everything with Marcus, I'm paranoid. Ryan understood that. Once you found one problem, you started seeing threats everywhere. Want me to take a look? He asked. You don't have to. Sophie, do you want me to take a look or not? She met his eyes. Yes, please. Okay, send me the logs. I'll dig into it this afternoon. Are you sure? I know you wanted to take time. It's one afternoon. I can spare it. Sophie looked like she wanted to argue, but she just nodded. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Might be nothing. But if it's not, then we figure it out. She left a few minutes later, promising to send the logs within the hour. Ryan watched her go, then turned back to the playground. Ellie was hanging upside down from the monkey bars, her face red. Bug, get down before you hurt yourself. I'm fine. Ellie, she dropped to the ground, landing in a crouch. I was being a bat. Bats don't hang from monkey bars. These ones do. Ryan couldn't argue with that logic. They stayed at the park until early afternoon. Ellie played until she was sweaty and grass-stained and completely exhausted. Ryan carried her home on his shoulders, her arms draped loosely around his neck. Back at the apartment, he set her up with a movie and a sandwich, then opened his laptop. The logs from Sophie arrived exactly when she said they would. Ryan scanned through them, looking for patterns. The access attempts were there, clear as day. 3 separate instances, each one probing a different part of the system. Not random. Methodical. Someone was looking for something, or testing something. Ryan pulled up the IP address, ran it through a few lookup tools. The VPN made it nearly impossible to trace, but there were still digital fingerprints. The way the requests were structured, the specific endpoints being targeted. It reminded him of something. He opened another window, pulled up the code from last night. The configuration changes Marcus had made. The authentication token, refresh. Then he compared it to the access attempts. The pattern matched. Whoever was probing the system was using the same methodology Marcus had used to sabotage it. Ryan's stomach went cold. He picked up his phone, dialed Sophie. She answered on the second ring. Did you find something? Yeah, and you're not going to like it. Tell me. The access attempts aren't random. They're targeted. Someone's testing the exact vulnerabilities Marcus created. Silence. Sophie? I'm here. Her voice was tight. Are you saying someone else is involved? I'm saying someone knew what Marcus did, and they're trying to see if it's still exploitable. But we fixed it. We fixed the immediate problem. But if someone has the original configuration changes, they could recreate the vulnerability. Or find a new one based on the same logic. Sophie swore, the sound sharp and vicious. Who would... She stopped. Marcus. You think he's still trying to sabotage you? I don't know, maybe. Or maybe he told someone else about what he did. Ryan leaned back in his chair, thinking. Who else knew about the issues before we fixed them? The core team, Marcus, obviously, 2 other senior developers, and our infrastructure manager. Anyone else? Not that I know of. What about investors? Board members? We don't have a board. It's just me and a handful of angel investors who mostly stay hands-off. Ryan drummed his fingers on the desk. Okay, here's what we do. I'm going to set up monitoring on those endpoints. If someone tries to probe again, we'll catch it in real time. And you need to talk to Marcus. I sent him on leave. Then unsend him. Or go to his house. This is important. Sophie was quiet for a moment. You think he's working with someone? I think someone knows too much about your system, and Marcus is the most obvious connection. Okay, I'll go talk to him. She paused. Do you want to come? Can't. I've got Ellie. Right, of course. Sophie exhaled slowly. Okay, I'll handle it. Let me know if the monitoring catches anything. Will do. The call ended. Ryan sat there, staring at his laptop screen. The access attempts glowed in the log files, each one a small intrusion. Harmless on their own, but together they formed a picture. Someone was circling Sophie's company like a shark, and Ryan had a bad feeling it wasn't going to stop. He spent the next hour setting up the monitoring system. It was detailed work, requiring him to anticipate every possible attack vector and set tripwires accordingly. By the time he finished, his eyes were burning and his coffee was cold. Ellie appeared at his elbow. Dad, the movie's over. Already? It's been like 2 hours. Ryan checked the time. She was right. Sorry, Bug. I got distracted. It's okay. She climbed into his lap, resting her head against his chest. Are you working again? Just a little bit. For the pancake lady? Ryan smiled despite himself. The pancake lady? The one from the coffee shop. She was nice. Her name's Sophie, and yeah, I'm helping her with something. Is it important? Yeah, it is. Ellie was quiet for a moment. Then she said, You're not going to work all the time again, are you? The question hit him harder than it should have. No, Bug, I'm not. Promise? Ryan wrapped his arms around her, holding her close. I promise. She relaxed against him, satisfied. They stayed like that for a while, Ellie warm and solid in his lap, the apartment quiet around them. Ryan's phone buzzed. Sophie's name flashed on the screen. He answered, careful not to disturb Ellie. Yeah? I talked to Marcus. Sophie's voice was strained. He swears he didn't tell anyone about what he did. Says he's been home the whole time, hasn't even looked at his work laptop. Do you believe him? I want to, but I don't know anymore. Ryan shifted Ellie slightly, reaching for his laptop with his free hand. Did he say anything useful? Not really, just kept apologizing, said he'd do anything to fix it. Okay, keep him on leave for now. If he's telling the truth, distance is good. If he's lying, we don't want him near the system. Agreed, Sophie paused. Ryan, I'm starting to think this is bigger than just a disgruntled employee. What do you mean? I mean, what if someone's been watching us this whole time, waiting for a vulnerability to exploit? Who would do that? Competitors. Corporate espionage. Hell, I don't know. But the timing's too perfect. Marcus creates a weakness, we fix it, and immediately someone starts probing to see if they can recreate it. Ryan didn't like where this was going. You think someone manipulated Marcus? I think it's possible. That's a serious accusation. I know, but so is someone trying to hack my company. She had a point. Ryan pulled up the monitoring system, checked the logs. Nothing new yet, but it was only a matter of time. Keep your team on alert, he said, and don't trust anyone who doesn't absolutely need to know about this. What about you? Do you need to know? Ryan looked down at Ellie, who was half asleep against his chest. At the apartment that suddenly felt smaller, at the life he was trying to build. He should say no, should walk away from whatever mess Sophie's company was turning into, but he didn't. Yeah, he said quietly. I need to know. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Why does everyone keep saying that? Despite everything, Ryan smiled. Because we haven't fixed the problem. When we do, I'm thanking you so hard you'll get sick of it. I'll hold you to that. They ended the call. Ryan sat there, Ellie breathing softly against him, his laptop glowing with code and warnings, and the digital fingerprints of someone who wanted to hurt Sophie's company. 24 hours ago, he'd been a guy who quit his job to make pancakes for his daughter. Now he was neck-deep in corporate sabotage and potential espionage. He should be terrified. Instead, he felt weirdly calm. Maybe it was the exhaustion, or maybe it was the fact that, for the first time in months, he was doing something that mattered, something that used his skills for more than just hitting deadlines. Ellie stirred in his lap. Dad? Yeah, Bug? Can we have spaghetti for dinner? Ryan kissed the top of her head. Yeah, we can have spaghetti. With meatballs? With meatballs. She settled back down, content. Ryan closed his laptop. The monitoring system was running. If anyone tried to probe Sophie's system again, he'd know. But right now, his daughter wanted spaghetti, and that, at least, was a problem he knew how to solve. The spaghetti was boiling over by the time Ryan's laptop started screaming. Not literally screaming, but the alert notification was loud enough that Ellie jumped, nearly dropping her juice box. What's that? She asked. Ryan was already moving, scooping her up and setting her on the counter away from the stove. Stay here, Bug. Don't touch anything. He grabbed his laptop from the kitchen table, eyes scanning the monitoring dashboard. The alerts were cascading down the screen, one after another. Someone was hammering Sophie's system, not probing anymore. Full-on attacking. His phone rang before he could process what he was seeing. Are you watching this? Sophie's voice was tight with panic. Yeah, when did it start? 2 minutes ago. They're hitting every endpoint at once. It's like they're trying to overwhelm the system. Ryan pulled up the traffic analysis. The attack was sophisticated, distributed, coming from multiple IP addresses simultaneously, all masked through different VPNs. This wasn't some script kiddie messing around. This was planned. How's the system holding up? So far it's fine, but if they keep this up, Sophie's voice cut off. Ryan heard shouting in the background. Hold on. The line went silent. Ryan watched the attack intensify. Whoever was doing this knew exactly where to hit, the authentication layer, the data sync endpoints, every weak point in the architecture. They'd studied the system, learned its vulnerabilities. Marcus's voice echoed in Ryan's memory. I didn't tell anyone, but someone knew. Sophie came back on the line. We just lost cloud sync. The integration went down. Is it the attack or the system? I don't know. Marcus says... She stopped. Wait, Marcus isn't here. Why did I just... Sophie, focus. Is Marcus there or not? No, I sent him home, remember? Her breathing was ragged. I'm losing it. We can't lose cloud sync again. Titan Corp will drop us. Ryan looked at Ellie, who was watching him with wide eyes. The water was still boiling, steam rising toward the ceiling. He had a choice to make. Dad? Ellie's voice was small. Ryan turned off the stove, moved the pot to a cold burner. Sophie, I'm coming to you. Give me 20 minutes. You said you couldn't... 20 minutes. He ended the call before she could argue. Ellie was still on the counter, juice box forgotten in her hands. Are you leaving? Just for a little while. You promised. The words hit him like a punch. I know, Bug. I know I did. You said you wouldn't work all the time. I'm not. This is just... It's important. Your work was always important. Her eyes were filling with tears. You always said that. Ryan felt something crack in his chest. She was right. He'd said the exact same thing 100 times before. Important meeting, important deadline, important project. Everything was always important except her. He crossed to the counter, lifted her down, and knelt so they were eye level. Listen to me. You're right. I did break my promise. And I'm sorry. He brushed a tear from her cheek. But this is different. Someone's trying to hurt Sophie's company. And if I don't help, a lot of people might lose their jobs. So those people have families, kids maybe. And if they lose their jobs, those kids won't have what they need. Ellie sniffled. Like us? Yeah, like us. She was quiet for a moment, processing. How long will you be gone? A few hours, maybe less. What am I supposed to do? Ryan pulled out his phone, scrolled through his contacts. There was exactly one person he could call on short notice. He hated himself for it, but he didn't have a choice. He dialed. Lauren answered on the third ring. Ryan, what's wrong? I need a favor. His ex-wife's sigh was audible even through the phone. What kind of favor? Can you take Ellie for a few hours? There's an emergency and An emergency. Her tone was flat. Like the emergency that made you miss her birthday party? Or the emergency that made you cancel our custody weekend last month? This is different. It's always different. Ryan closed his eyes, fighting back the anger rising in his throat. Lauren, please. I know I've screwed up. I know you have every reason to say no. But I wouldn't ask if it wasn't serious. The line went quiet. Then Lauren said, I'll be there in 15 minutes. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just don't make this a habit. She hung up. Ryan looked at Ellie, who was watching him with an expression too old for her face. Aunt Lauren's coming to get you, he said. I heard. Bug, it's fine. But her voice said it wasn't fine. Nothing about this was fine. Ryan wanted to fix it, to make it better, to somehow undo the fact that he was breaking his promise less than 12 hours after making it. But he couldn't. All he could do was be honest. I'm going to make this up to you, he said. I don't know how yet, but I will. Ellie didn't respond, just picked up her juice box and went to her room. Ryan stood there in the kitchen, surrounded by half-cooked spaghetti and the sound of his laptop alerting him to another wave of attacks, and wondered when his life had become this complicated. Lauren arrived exactly 15 minutes later, her car pulling up with the kind of precision that made Ryan feel even worse about calling her. She was good at showing up, always had been. It was one of the things that made their divorce so painful. She'd been there for everything except the parts that mattered to him. Or maybe he'd been there for nothing except the parts that didn't matter to her. The distinction felt important, but he didn't have time to think about it. "Where is she?" Lauren asked, not bothering with pleasantries. "Her room." Lauren walked past him without another word. Ryan heard her knock softly, heard the door open, heard the low murmur of conversation he couldn't make out. 5 minutes later, they emerged. Ellie had her backpack and her purple jacket. She didn't look at Ryan. "Say goodbye to your dad," Lauren prompted. Ellie walked over, let Ryan hug her. She didn't hug back. "I love you, Bug," he whispered. She nodded against his chest, but didn't say it back. Then they were gone. Ryan stood in the empty apartment, listening to the silence, feeling like the worst father in the world. His laptop chimed again. He grabbed it and ran. The office was chaos when Ryan arrived. People were shouting, phones were ringing, and Sophie was in the middle of it all, coordinating her team like a general commanding troops. She saw Ryan and her expression shifted from stressed to something that might have been relief. "Conference room," she said. "Now." Ryan followed her through the maze of desks. The energy in the room was frantic, scared. Marcus was there, despite Sophie supposedly sending him home. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. 2 other developers Ryan didn't recognize were hunched over laptops, typing furiously. "Status," Sophie said as soon as the door closed. "CloudSync is still down," one of the developers said. His name tag read Jordan. "We managed to reroute through the backup integration, but it's not going to hold." "How long do we have?" "Maybe an hour. After that, data starts corrupting." Sophie turned to Ryan. "Can you fix it?" "I need to see what we're dealing with." Jordan slid his laptop across the table. Ryan scanned the code, the error logs, the traffic patterns. The attack was brutal. Whoever designed it understood the system's architecture intimately. They knew exactly how much pressure to apply and where. "This isn't random," Ryan said. "They're targeting specific bottlenecks, like they have a map of your infrastructure." "That's impossible," Marcus said. "The only people with that kind of access are in this room." Ryan looked at him. "You sure about that?" "What are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything. I'm asking a question." Marcus stood up. "I already told Sophie I didn't—" "Sit down." Sophie's voice cut through the tension like a knife. "Both of you, we don't have time for this." Marcus sat, but his jaw was tight and his hands were clenched. Ryan turned back to the laptop. "We need to isolate the attack, figure out which endpoints are being hit hardest and redirect traffic away from them." "That'll slow down the entire system," Jordan said. "Better slow than broken." "He's right," Sophie said. "Do it." Jordan and the other developers started typing. Ryan pulled up the monitoring system he'd built, watching the attack pattern shift and flow. There was a rhythm to it, almost musical, like someone was testing the system's limits, seeing how far they could push before something broke. And then he saw it. A single IP address buried in the flood of traffic. Different from the others, not masked through a VPN, just sitting there, watching. "Sophie," Ryan said quietly. She came over. "What?" He pointed at the screen. "That IP. It's not attacking, it's observing." "So?" "So someone's watching us work, learning how we respond." Sophie's face went pale. "Can you trace it?" Ryan ran the IP through a lookup tool. The results came back almost immediately. The address belonged to a server registered to Vanguard Technologies. Sophie's breath caught. "No." "You know them?" "Vanguard is—" She stopped, choosing her words carefully. "They're our biggest competitor. Been trying to poach our clients for months." "You think they're behind this?" "I think it's one hell of a coincidence." Ryan pulled up more information on Vanguard. The company was larger than Apex, better funded, with a reputation for aggressive business tactics. They'd launched a competing product 6 months ago that had failed to gain traction. Not because it was bad, because Apex's solution was better. "They're not just attacking," Ryan said. "They're studying, learning how your system works so they can copy it." Marcus leaned over, reading the screen. "That's corporate espionage." "Yeah," Ryan said. "It is." Sophie pulled out her phone. "I'm calling our lawyer." "Wait." Ryan caught her arm. "If you go legal now, they'll know we're onto them. They'll destroy evidence, cover their tracks." So what do we do? Ryan thought for a moment, then he smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. We give them exactly what they want. Sophie stared at him. Explain. They're watching to learn how the system works. So we show them. Except we show them a version that's just broken enough that if they try to copy it, their whole infrastructure implodes. A trap. A trap. Marcus was shaking his head. That's insane. If we deploy broken code, we risk corrupting our own data. Not if we isolate it, Ryan said. We create a sandbox environment, mirror the live system, but keep it separate. Feed them that instead of the real thing. Jordan looked up from his laptop. Could work, but we'd need to make it convincing. If they realize it's fake, they bail. Then we make it convincing, Sophie said. Her eyes were hard now, focused. How long do we need? Few hours to set up the environment, Ryan said. After that, it depends on how long they keep watching. Do it. Sophie turned to Marcus. You're with Ryan. Jordan, keep the main system stable. I want regular updates every 15 minutes. Everyone moved. Ryan and Marcus worked in tense silence, building the sandbox environment piece by piece. It was delicate work. The fake system had to be identical to the real one in every way except the ways that mattered. A database table here, a configuration file there, small changes that would cascade into catastrophic failures if someone tried to replicate them. Why are you helping her? Marcus asked after an hour. Ryan didn't look up from his screen. What? Sophie, you don't work here. You don't owe her anything. Why are you doing this? Because it's the right thing to do. That's it? That's it. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. The sabotage. I was just tired. I know. Do you? Because everyone keeps looking at me like I'm a traitor. Ryan stopped typing, looked at Marcus. You made a mistake, a bad one, but you owned it. That counts for something. Does it? Ask me again when this is over. They went back to work. By midnight, the sandbox was ready. Ryan connected it to the network, routing traffic so that anyone watching from outside would see the fake system instead of the real one. It was elegant, subtle. And if it worked, Vanguard Technologies would spend weeks trying to reverse engineer a system designed to fail. It's live, Ryan said. Sophie came over studying the screen. How do we know if they take the bait? We watch, and we wait. So they waited. The office grew quiet as the night stretched on. Most of the team went home. Jordan stayed, monitoring the main system. Marcus dozed at his desk, head pillowed on his arms. Sophie paced, drinking coffee that had gone cold hours ago. Ryan watched the monitoring dashboard, waiting for movement. It came at 2:47 a.m. The Vanguard IP address started pulling data. Not aggressively, carefully, like someone trying not to get caught. They're in, Ryan said softly. Sophie was at his shoulder in an instant. How much are they taking? Everything. System architecture, database schemas, integration protocols. Ryan watched the data stream out. They're copying the entire framework, including the broken parts. Including the broken parts. Sophie smiled. It was sharp and cold and satisfied. How long until they realize? Depends on how good their developers are. Could be days. Could be weeks. And when they do, by then it'll be too late. They'll have built their system on a foundation that doesn't work. Everything they create will be corrupted from the ground up. Sophie leaned back against the desk. That's brutal. They tried to destroy your company. I know. I'm not complaining. She looked at Ryan. You're kind of scary when you want to be. I'll take that as a compliment. They watched in silence as Vanguard continued downloading data. The progress bar crept forward megabyte by megabyte. By 4 a.m., they had everything. Then the connection dropped. They're done, Ryan said. So that's it? We just wait for them to hang themselves? That's it. Sophie let out a long breath. I should feel better about this. But you don't. But I don't. She rubbed her face. Is this what business is now? Sabotage and corporate espionage and trapping people? Sometimes? When the other side doesn't play fair? I hate it. Yeah, me too. Marcus stirred, lifting his head. Is it over? For now, Sophie said. What happens next? We document everything, build a case. Then we call our lawyer and bury Vanguard so deep they never see daylight again. Marcus nodded slowly. I want to help. You are helping. You're here. No, I mean with the legal case. I'll testify if you need me to. Tell them everything about what I did and why. Sophie looked at him for a long moment. That's not going to be easy. You'll have to admit you sabotaged the company. I know, but it's the truth. Marcus's voice was steady. And maybe it's time I started telling the truth. Something passed between them. Understanding, maybe. Or forgiveness. Ryan couldn't tell. Okay, Sophie said finally. We'll talk to the lawyers together. Marcus smiled weakly. Thanks, boss. Don't call me boss, it's weird. The tension broke. Marcus laughed, the sound surprised and genuine. Ryan stood up, stretching. Every muscle in his body ached. I need to go. Now? Sophie checked her watch. It's almost 5 a.m. I know, and I've been gone for almost 12 hours. He thought about Ellie, about the way she hadn't hugged him back when Lauren picked her up. I need to go home. Sophie nodded. Thank you for everything. Send me the documentation tomorrow. I'll review it before you give it to your lawyer. You don't have to. Sophie, send me the documentation. She smiled. Okay. Ryan grabbed his jacket and headed for the door. He was halfway across the office when Sophie called his name. He turned. The meeting with Titan Corp, she said. Next week. You're still coming, right? Ryan thought about that. About the fact that he'd promised Ellie no more all-consuming work. About the fact that Sophie kept pulling him back in. But he also thought about the way Sophie had changed, the way she was trying to build something better, the way she actually listened when people told her the truth. Yeah, he said. I'm still coming. Good. Sophie's expression softened. And Ryan, your daughter's lucky to have you. She doesn't feel that way right now. She will. Give her time. Ryan hoped she was right. He left before the sun came up, driving through empty streets back to his apartment. The city looked different in the pre-dawn light. Quieter. Almost peaceful. His phone buzzed, a text from Lauren. Ellie's asleep. You can pick her up after 9. Thank you, he typed back. No response. He didn't expect one. Ryan pulled into his parking spot and sat there for a moment, engine off, letting the silence wash over him. 48 hours ago, he'd been a guy who quit his job to make pancakes. Now he was neck-deep in corporate warfare, and his daughter wasn't speaking to him. Some things never changed. He dragged himself upstairs, unlocked the apartment door, and stopped. The spaghetti pot was still on the stove. The water had evaporated, leaving crusty residue around the edges. Ellie's juice box sat abandoned on the counter. Evidence of the moment everything had gone sideways. Ryan cleaned it up, washed the pot, threw away the juice box, put everything back in its place like that could somehow fix what he'd broken. Then he collapsed on the couch and stared at the ceiling. His laptop was on the coffee table, still running the monitoring software, still tracking the data Vanguard had stolen. He should turn it off, get some sleep. Instead, he opened it, checked the logs one more time. Everything was quiet. The attack had stopped. The sandbox was holding. Vanguard had taken the bait and disappeared. They'd won. So why did Ryan feel like he'd lost something important? He thought about Ellie's face when she realized he was leaving. The way she'd let him hug her but hadn't hugged back. The way she'd gone to her room without saying goodbye. He told himself this was different, that he was helping people, that it mattered. But to Ellie, it was just another broken promise. Ryan closed his laptop, lay down on the couch, and for the first time in days, he let himself feel the full weight of what he'd done. It hurt. But maybe it was supposed to. Outside, the sun was starting to rise. Light crept across the floor, warming the apartment inch by inch. Ryan watched it spread, thinking about second chances and whether he deserved one. He didn't know, but he was going to find out. He set an alarm for 8:30, closed his eyes, and let the exhaustion pull him under. Tomorrow, he'd go get his daughter. Tomorrow, he'd figure out how to fix this. Tomorrow. The alarm went off at 8:30, but Ryan was already awake, staring at the ceiling and running through apologies in his head. None of them sounded right. They all felt hollow. Empty words trying to fill a space that needed something more than words. He showered, dressed, made coffee. He didn't drink. By 9 o'clock, he was sitting in his car outside Lauren's house, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to figure out what he was going to say to his daughter. The house looked the same as it always did. Neat lawn, painted shutters, the kind of place that said someone cared about appearances. Lauren had always been good at that, making things look right even when they weren't. Ryan got out of the car and walked to the front door. Lauren answered before he could knock. She looked tired, more tired than he'd seen her in months. "She's in the living room," Lauren said. No greeting, no small talk, just information delivered efficiently. "How was she?" "Quiet. Didn't eat much dinner. Went to bed early." Lauren crossed her arms. "She asked me why you always leave." The words landed like a punch. "What did you tell her?" "The truth, that I don't know." Lauren's eyes were hard. "Do you know, Ryan? Because I've been asking myself that question for 3 years and I still don't have an answer." "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" She stepped aside, letting him pass. "She's waiting for you." Ryan walked into the living room. Ellie was sitting on the couch, her backpack already packed beside her, watching cartoons with the volume turned low. She didn't look up when he entered. "Hey, Bug," he said softly. She kept watching the TV. Ryan sat down on the opposite end of the couch, leaving space between them. "I'm sorry about yesterday." No response. "I know I promised I wouldn't work all the time, and I broke that promise. That wasn't fair to you." Ellie's jaw tightened, but she still didn't look at him. "I'm not asking you to forgive me right away," Ryan continued, "but I want you to know that I'm going to do better. I'm going to figure out how to keep my promises." Finally, Ellie turned to face him. Her eyes were red. She'd been crying. "You always say that," she said. Her voice was small but steady. "You said it when you and Mom got divorced. You said it when we moved to the apartment. You always say you're going to do better and then you don't." Ryan felt something crack inside his chest. "You're right. So why should I believe you this time?" It was a fair question, a hard question, the kind of question adults asked when they'd been let down too many times. 6-year-olds shouldn't have to ask questions like that. "You shouldn't," Ryan said finally. "Believing me doesn't make sense. I've proven I can't keep promises." Ellie blinked, surprised, like she'd expected him to argue. "But I'm going to try anyway," Ryan continued. "Not because I think you should trust me, but because you deserve a dad who shows up, who's actually there, and I want to be that person." "What if you can't?" "Then I'll keep trying until I figure it out." Ellie looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, "I don't want to live with Mom." Ryan's heart stopped. "What?" "When you were gone last night, Mom kept asking if I wanted to stay with her more. She said maybe it would be easier." Ellie's voice wavered. "I don't want easier. I want you." Ryan couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. "But I want you to be there," Ellie added. "Not just in the apartment, actually there." "I will be," Ryan managed. "I promise." "You keep saying that word, promise, but it doesn't mean anything anymore." She was right. The word had lost its weight, become cheap, disposable. So Ryan did the only thing he could think of. He stood up, walked to the kitchen where Lauren was pretending not to listen, and pulled out his phone. "What are you doing?" Lauren asked. Ryan didn't answer. He dialed Sophie's number. She picked up on the second ring. "Ryan, everything okay?" "I need to tell you something." "Okay." "I can't do the Titan Corp meeting." Silence on the other end. "Sophie?" "I heard you." Her voice was careful, controlled. "Can I ask why?" "Because my daughter needs me. And I keep choosing work over her. I keep telling myself it's just one more thing, one more project, one more emergency. But it's never just one thing. It's always going to be something." Ryan looked at Ellie, who was watching him from the living room doorway. "So I'm choosing her, right now, before I lose her completely." Sophie was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I understand." "You do?" "Yeah, I do." She paused. "For what it's worth, I think you're making the right choice." "Really? Really? Your daughter needs you more than I do." Sophie's voice softened. "I'll handle Titan Corp. You handle being a dad." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. You're doing exactly what you should be doing." She paused. "And Ryan, thank you for everything. You saved my company. That's not nothing." "Take care of yourself, Sophie." "You too." The call ended. Ryan stood there for a moment, phone in his hand, feeling like he'd just jumped off a cliff and wasn't sure if he was falling or flying. Lauren was staring at him. Did you just turn down work? Yeah. Actual work, with actual money. Yeah. She looked like she wanted to say something, started to, then stopped. Finally settled on, good. Ryan walked back to the living room. Ellie was still in the doorway. I just told Sophie I can't work with her anymore, he said. Ellie's eyes went wide. The pancake lady? Yeah. But you like that job. I like you more. Ellie's face crumpled. She ran to him, wrapping her arms around his waist and burying her face against his chest. Ryan held her tight, feeling her shake with sobs she'd been holding in. I'm sorry, Bug, he whispered into her hair. I'm so sorry. Don't leave again, she said between sobs. Please don't leave again. I won't. I promise. He paused. And I know that word doesn't mean much right now, but I'm going to make it mean something again, even if it takes me the rest of my life. They stood there for a long time, Ellie crying and Ryan holding her, while Lauren watched from the kitchen doorway with an expression that might have been approval, or might have been sadness, or might have been both. Eventually, Ellie's sobs quieted. She pulled back, wiping her face with her sleeve. Can we go home now? She asked. Yeah, Bug, we can go home. They gathered her things. Ryan thanked Lauren, who just nodded and closed the door without comment. Then they were in the car, driving back to the apartment, and Ryan felt like maybe, just maybe, he'd done something right. Ellie fell asleep in the back seat before they made it home. Ryan carried her upstairs, tucked her into bed even though it was barely 10 in the morning. She didn't wake up, just curled into her pillow and kept sleeping. Ryan stood there watching her breathe, thinking about all the moments he'd missed, all the times he'd chosen work over this, over her. His phone buzzed. A text from Sophie. I meant what I said. You're doing the right thing. Then another message. But if you ever want to work together again, on your terms, the door's open. Ryan stared at the message for a long moment. Then he typed back. Thank you for understanding. I learned from the best, Sophie replied. You showed me what matters. Now I'm trying to do the same. Ryan smiled despite himself. Then he turned off his phone and put it in a drawer. For the rest of the day, he was just a dad. He and Ellie made pancakes for lunch when she woke up. Real ones this time, not the burn disasters from before. They went to the park and played on the swings until Ellie's legs were tired. They came home and built a fort in the living room out of couch cushions and blankets. They watched movies and ate popcorn and didn't talk about work or promises or any of the heavy things that had been weighing them down. It was simple. Easy. It felt like breathing after holding your breath for months. That night, after Ellie was asleep for real, Ryan sat on the couch and thought about what came next. The money from Sophie's job would last a few months. After that, he'd need to find something else, something that let him be present, something that didn't consume him. He didn't know what that looked like yet, but for the first time, he wasn't terrified of figuring it out. His phone buzzed in the drawer where he'd left it. Ryan ignored it. Whatever it was could wait until tomorrow. The week that followed was the quietest Ryan had experienced in years. No crisis calls, no emergency projects, no deadlines looming over everything like storm clouds, just him and Ellie rebuilding something that had been broken for too long. They established routines, breakfast together every morning, park visits in the afternoon, dinner at the table instead of in front of screens, bedtime stories that Ryan actually paid attention to instead of reading on autopilot while thinking about code. It was harder than he expected. Not the logistics, the mental adjustment. Learning to be fully present instead of letting his mind drift to problems that needed solving or systems that needed fixing. But he kept at it. And slowly, Ellie started to relax, started to believe that maybe this time was different. On Thursday, she asked if they could invite the pancake lady over for dinner. Ryan blinked. Sophie? Yeah, I liked her. She was nice. Bug, I don't work with her anymore, remember? So? She's still your friend, isn't she? Ryan thought about that. Were they friends? They'd worked together for less than a week, most of it under crisis conditions. But Sophie had understood when he walked away, had supported it, even. That counted for something. Yeah, he said. I guess she is. So can we invite her? I'll ask. He texted Sophie that afternoon. Ellie wants to know if you'd like to come to dinner tomorrow night. Fair warning, she's 6 and has opinions about everything. Sophie's response came 10 minutes later. I would love to. What should I bring? Just yourself. Ellie's in charge of the menu, so lower your expectations accordingly. Can't wait. Ryan showed Ellie the message. She grinned so wide it made his chest hurt in a good way. What are we making? He asked. Spaghetti. The right way this time, with meatballs. You got it, Bug. They spent Friday afternoon preparing. Ellie insisted on helping with everything, even the parts she was too young for. She stood on a chair at the stove, carefully stirring the sauce while Ryan hovered nearby, making sure she didn't burn herself. She rolled the meatballs, getting meat mixture all over her hands and giggling about it. She set the table with mismatched plates and napkins folded into weird shapes. By the time Sophie arrived at 6, the apartment smelled like garlic and tomatoes, and something that felt almost like home. Sophie showed up with a bottle of wine and a board game with a cartoon dragon on the box. For after dinner, she explained, handing the game to Ellie. If your dad says it's okay. Ellie looked at Ryan with pleading eyes. After dinner, Ryan confirmed. Yes! Ellie ran to put the game on the coffee table like she was afraid it might disappear. Sophie stepped inside, looking around the small apartment with genuine interest. This is nice. It's small. Small can be nice. She handed him the wine. How have you been? Good. Quiet. It's been good. You sound surprised. Maybe I am. They ate at the tiny kitchen table, plates overlapping, elbows bumping. The spaghetti was actually good this time. Ellie told Sophie about the fort they'd built and the movie they'd watched and the frog they'd seen at the park. Sophie listened like every word mattered, asking questions and laughing at the right parts. Ryan watched them interact and felt something settle in his chest. This was what normal looked like, what healthy looked like. He'd almost forgotten. After dinner, they played the dragon game. It was surprisingly complicated with dice and cards and elaborate rules about treasure hoarding. Ellie took it very seriously, narrating her dragon's adventures in a voice that sounded like she'd been gargling gravel. Sophie played along without condescension, getting just as invested in the story as Ellie was. Ryan lost spectacularly, his dragon eaten by a giant sea serpent in the 3rd round. He didn't mind. By 8:30, Ellie was yawning between turns. Bedtime, Bug, Ryan said, but we're not done. We'll finish tomorrow. Promise? There was that word again, but this time Ryan didn't hesitate. Promise. Ellie accepted that, gathering up her dragon cards and heading to her room. She stopped at the doorway, looked back at Sophie. Thanks for coming, she said. Sophie smiled. Thanks for inviting me. After Ellie was settled, Ryan and Sophie moved to the couch. The wine sat unopened on the counter. Neither of them had touched it. She's amazing, Sophie said. Yeah, she is. You're doing a good job. I'm trying. That's all anyone can do. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Sophie said, The Titan Corp meeting went well. Yeah? Yeah. They're expanding the contract, want us to integrate with 2 more of their systems. That's great, Sophie. It is. She paused. They asked about you. Ryan looked at her. What did you tell them? The truth. That you were consulting, that you solved an impossible problem, and that you're not available for ongoing work because you're prioritizing your family. Sophie met his eyes. They respected that, said they wished more people had their priorities straight. Really? Really, she smiled. Turns out honesty works sometimes. Who knew? Sophie laughed. Then her expression turned more serious. I've been making changes. At the company. Hired 3 new developers so the team isn't stretched so thin. Implemented actual work-life balance policies, even took a weekend off. How'd that feel? Terrifying. Then kinda nice. She tucked her hair behind her ear. I keep thinking about what you said, about choosing what matters. And I realized I'd been choosing wrong. You're choosing right now. Trying to? She looked around the small apartment. This is what it looks like, isn't it? Choosing right? This is what it looks like for me. Might be different for you. Maybe. Sophie stood up. I should go. Let you get some rest. Ryan walked her to the door. She turned before leaving. Thank you for tonight, for everything. Thank you for understanding when I walked away. That's what friends do, right? Ryan smiled. Yeah, I guess it is. Sophie left, and Ryan closed the door behind her, feeling like maybe the world was a little less complicated than it had been a week ago. He checked on Ellie. She was already asleep, dragon cards scattered on her nightstand. Ryan gathered them carefully, stacking them in a neat pile. Tomorrow they'd finish the game, and the day after that, they'd do something else. Build another fort. Go to the park. Make pancakes. Simple things. Important things. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Mr. Carter, this is Janet Reeves from Titan Corp. I hope you don't mind Sophie giving me your number. I have a proposition for you. Ryan stared at the message. Another job offer, another opportunity to prove himself, another chance to dive back into the chaos. A week ago, he might have jumped at it. Now he set the phone down without responding. Whatever Janet Reeves wanted could wait until morning. Or the day after. Or never. Right now, Ryan had everything he needed. He turned off the lights and went to bed, listening to the quiet sounds of his daughter breathing in the next room, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, he slept all the way through the night without dreaming about code or deadlines or any of the things that used to keep him awake. When morning came, he woke to Ellie shaking his shoulder. Dad, Dad, wake up. He opened his eyes. She was standing beside the bed, already dressed, hair sticking up in every direction. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, but you said we'd finish the game today. Ryan checked his phone. 6:30 in the morning. Bug, it's early. But you promised. There was that word again. Ryan sat up, rubbing his face. Okay, let me make coffee first. Can I have hot chocolate? Yeah, you can have hot chocolate. They went to the kitchen together. Ryan made coffee and hot chocolate while Ellie set up the game on the living room floor, arranging the pieces with careful precision. His phone was on the counter, Janet Reeves's message still unanswered. Ryan looked at it for a long moment. Then he picked it up and typed a response. Ms. Reeves, thank you for reaching out. I appreciate the offer, but I'm not taking on new projects right now. I'm focusing on my family. If anything changes, I'll let you know. He hit send before he could second-guess himself. The phone buzzed almost immediately. I understand completely. Best of luck to you and your family. Simple, clean, done. Ryan set the phone down and joined Ellie on the floor. They played dragons until breakfast, and then they made pancakes together, and then they went to the park because the sun was shining and Ellie wanted to try the monkey bars again. It was an ordinary day, a normal day. The kind of day Ryan used to think was boring back when he measured his worth in problems solved and systems fixed. Now it felt like everything. That afternoon, while Ellie was coloring at the kitchen table, Ryan's phone rang. Sophie's name on the screen. He answered. Hey, did Titan Corp reach out to you? Yeah, Janet Reeves sent a message last night. And? I turned it down. Sophie was quiet for a moment. Good for you. You're not disappointed? Why would I be disappointed? You're doing exactly what you said you'd do. She paused. Actually, I'm calling because I wanted to run something by you. Okay. What if we collaborated? Not full-time, not even regular hours. Just occasional consulting when I hit problems that need your specific brain. Sophie, hear me out. You set the terms. You decide when you're available. If you can't do something because Ellie needs you, no questions asked. No guilt, no pressure, just problem solving when it works for both of us. Ryan thought about that. What's the catch? No catch. I need someone I can trust to give me honest answers. You need flexibility. This works for both of us. And if I say no, then I say thanks for considering it, and we stay friends. Ryan looked at Ellie, bent over her coloring book, tongue sticking out in concentration. He thought about the mortgage that would come due eventually, about the fact that his savings wouldn't last forever, about the reality that he couldn't just avoid work indefinitely. But he also thought about the promises he'd made, about the life he was trying to build. Can I think about it? He asked. Take all the time you need. Thanks, Sophie. Anytime. The call ended. Ellie looked up from her coloring. Was that the pancake lady? Yeah, Bug. What did she want? She wanted to know if I could help her sometimes, when she has problems. Ellie considered this. Would you have to leave again? Sometimes, but only when you're okay with it, and only if it doesn't mess up the important stuff. Like pancakes? Like pancakes. Ellie nodded slowly. Okay, but you have to ask me first. Deal. She went back to her coloring. Ryan sat there, watching her work, thinking about the choices that had led him here. All the wrong turns and missed opportunities and moments he couldn't take back, but also thinking about the moments he'd gotten right. The decision to quit his job, the choice to put Ellie first, the slow, difficult work of rebuilding trust. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't smooth, but it was real. And maybe that was enough. 3 weeks later, Ryan was making pancakes when his phone rang. He almost didn't answer. It was Saturday morning. Ellie was setting the table with exaggerated care, and the pancakes were hitting that perfect golden brown stage where another 30 seconds would ruin them. But the name on the screen made him pause. Sophie. They hadn't spoken since her offer. Ryan had been thinking about it, turning it over in his mind during quiet moments, but he hadn't come to a decision yet. Part of him knew that was the decision itself, that if he really wanted to say yes, he would have already. Hold on, Bug, he said to Ellie. He flipped the pancakes onto a plate and stepped into the living room. Hey. Hey. Sophie's voice sounded different, strained. Sorry to call on a weekend. I know you said, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Actually, everything's kind of great. Which is the problem? Ryan frowned. I'm not following. Vanguard Technologies imploded. Sophie let out a breath that might have been a laugh. You were right. They built their entire new system on the framework they stole from us. Spent 3 weeks developing it. Launched yesterday. It crashed spectacularly within 6 hours. How bad? Bad enough that they're facing lawsuits from their clients. Bad enough that their CEO resigned this morning. Bad enough that we just got approached by 4 companies who are using Vanguard and need a replacement immediately. Ryan moved to the window, looking out at the street below. That's good news. It's overwhelming news. We're not equipped to handle this kind of growth. Not yet. Sophie paused. I need help. Real help. Someone who can look at our infrastructure and tell me how to scale without breaking everything we've built. Sophie, I know what you said, and I'm not asking you to come back full time. I'm asking for one consultation, a few hours. You look at what we have, tell me what we need, and walk away. That's it. Ryan thought about Ellie in the kitchen, waiting for pancakes, about the quiet routine they'd built over the past 3 weeks, about the promise he'd made to himself and to her. When? He asked. Monday afternoon, 2 o'clock? I can work around whatever you need. I need to check with Ellie first. Of course. I'll call you back in an hour. Thank you, Ryan. Really. He hung up and stood there for a moment, phone in his hand, trying to figure out what he was feeling. It wasn't the pull of obligation. It wasn't fear of missing out. It was something simpler, curiosity, maybe, or the quiet satisfaction of knowing his work had mattered. Dad, the pancakes are getting cold. Ryan went back to the kitchen. Ellie was already in her seat, fork and knife ready, syrup bottle positioned for easy access. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then Ryan said, Sophie called. Ellie looked up, syrup on her chin. The pancake lady? Yeah, she needs help with something, just for a few hours on Monday. Ellie set down her fork. Do you want to help her? I think so, but only if you're okay with it. Where would I be? School gets out at 3, right? So I'd pick you up after and we'd go together. You could color or play on your tablet while I work. At her office? Yeah. Ellie thought about this, chewing slowly. Would there be snacks? I'll make sure there are snacks. Okay then, Ryan smiled. Just like that? You asked first. That's the rule, right? Yeah, Bug. That's the rule. She went back to her pancakes. The matter settled in her mind with the uncomplicated logic of childhood. Ryan called Sophie back and told her Monday would work. When Monday came, Ryan found himself more nervous than he expected. He dropped Ellie at school with her backpack full of coloring books and her tablet charged, then spent the morning cleaning the apartment and trying not to check his phone every 5 minutes. At 2 o'clock, he picked up Ellie and they drove to Sophie's office. The space looked different than he remembered, busier. There were new faces at desks, people he didn't recognize. The energy was different too, still intense, but less frantic, more focused. Sophie met them at the door. She looked tired but steady, clearer somehow, like someone who'd been holding their breath for months and finally remembered how to exhale. Hey, she said. Then to Ellie, Hey again, thanks for sharing your dad. Ellie shrugged. He said there'd be snacks. There are absolutely snacks. Jordan set up a whole station. Come on. She led them to the conference room. Someone had indeed set up a snack table with juice boxes, crackers, fruit, and cookies that looked homemade. Ellie's eyes went wide. Can I have a cookie? She asked Ryan. After the fruit. But after the fruit. Ellie grabbed an apple with exaggerated sadness and settled onto the couch. Sophie pulled up a chair next to Ryan. Okay, here's the situation. She walked him through everything: the new client acquisitions, the infrastructure limitations, the scaling problems they were starting to see. It was complex, but not insurmountable. The kind of challenge that required careful planning and smart architecture, but wasn't impossible. Ryan listened, asked questions, made notes. After an hour, he had a clear picture. You need to migrate to a distributed system, he said. Your current setup is too centralized. Works great at your current size, but the moment you scale up, you're going to hit bottlenecks. How long would that take? To do it right? 3 months? Maybe 4? But you can phase it. Start with the most critical components. Work your way down. Can you design it? Ryan looked at Ellie. She was on her second cookie, watching a video on her tablet with headphones on. I can design it, he said slowly, but I can't implement it. I'm not asking you to implement it. I'm asking you to give us the roadmap. Show us what to build and how to build it. My team can handle the actual work. That's a big roadmap, Sophie. We're talking about a complete system redesign. I know, which is why I'm willing to pay you for it. She named a number that made Ryan's chest tighten. That's too much. It's exactly right. You'd be saving us from months of trial and error, maybe years. This is what the work is worth. Ryan thought about his dwindling savings, about the bills that kept coming, about the future he was trying to build for Ellie that required more than just good intentions. I'd need to do it on my schedule, he said. Mornings while Ellie's at school, maybe some evenings after she goes to bed, but nothing that cuts into our time together. Done. And if something comes up with her, I'd drop everything, no questions. Wouldn't expect anything else. Ryan looked at his daughter, then back at Sophie. Okay, let's do it. They shook hands. Sophie smiled. You know, when I first showed up at your apartment, I thought I was hiring a developer. And now? Now I think I'm working with someone who actually knows what matters. Over the next 6 weeks, Ryan built the architecture for Sophie's new system. He worked in concentrated bursts, 3 or 4 hours at a time, always stopping before it consumed him. The work was good, challenging. It reminded him why he'd chosen this profession in the first place, back before deadlines and office politics had turned it into something he resented. But more than that, it fit into his life instead of becoming his life. He picked up Ellie from school every day. They had dinner together every night. On weekends, they went to the park or built forts or played the dragon game that had become a household fixture. And when Ellie went to bed, sometimes Ryan would open his laptop and work for an hour or two, refining the design, solving problems that didn't have easy answers. It was balanced, sustainable. It felt like breathing. Sophie's team started implementing the roadmap in phases. Ryan consulted when they hit snags, offering guidance without taking over. He watched them struggle through problems and find solutions, and he learned that letting other people solve things was harder than solving them himself. But it was also more rewarding, in a way he hadn't expected. In early December, Sophie invited them to the office holiday party. Ryan almost said no. Office parties had always felt obligatory to him, full of forced small talk and people pretending to enjoy themselves. But Ellie wanted to go. She'd heard there would be cookies, and Sophie seemed genuinely hopeful they'd come. So they went. The office was decorated with lights and a tree that leaned slightly to one side. Someone had set up a hot chocolate station with approximately 17 different toppings. Music played from a speaker somewhere, cheerful but not obnoxious. It was nicer than Ryan expected. Marcus was there, looking healthier than the last time Ryan had seen him. He'd put on weight, lost the shadows under his eyes. He was laughing at something Jordan said, relaxed in a way that seemed genuine. He saw Ryan and walked over. Hey. Hey. Heard you designed the new architecture. Sophie won't shut up about it. Ryan smiled slightly. It's a good design. It's a great design. I've been working on the implementation. It's elegant. Marcus paused. I wanted to thank you for not throwing me under the bus. I know you could have. Water under the bridge. Is it? Ryan thought about that. Yeah, I think it is. Marcus nodded, something easing in his expression. Well, thanks anyway. Sophie appeared with Ellie in tow, both of them holding mugs of hot chocolate, topped with what looked like half a can of whipped cream. We made hot chocolate volcanoes, Ellie announced proudly. I see that. Sophie says I can have 2 cookies because it's a party. Ryan looked at Sophie, who shrugged. Party rules. Fine, 2 cookies, but don't come crying to me when you can't sleep tonight. Ellie ran off to the snack table. Sophie watched her go. She's great, Ryan. You're doing something right. Trying to. More than trying. She took a sip of her volcanic hot chocolate. Hey, can I show you something? She led him to a quiet corner of the office where a whiteboard was covered in diagrams and timelines. The distributed system design he'd created, mapped out in phases with implementation dates and team assignments. We're ahead of schedule, Sophie said. The first phase goes live next week. The team's confident it'll hold. That's good. It's better than good. We're actually going to pull this off, and it's because of you. Ryan shook his head. It's because of your team. I just gave them a map. You gave us more than that. Sophie turned to face him. You gave us a second chance, and you showed me what it looks like to actually lead instead of just managing. I'm not a leader, Sophie. You keep saying that, and you keep being wrong. She smiled. Leaders don't have to be the loudest person in the room. They just have to know what matters and help other people see it too. That's what you did. Ryan didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded. They stood there for a moment, watching the party unfold around them, people laughing, relaxed, happy. You change things here, Ryan said quietly. We change things. Sophie glanced at him. I couldn't have done it without you. Yeah, you could have. Would have just taken longer. Maybe, but I'm glad I didn't have to. She paused. I'm glad you showed up that day, even if it was just to fix my broken system. I'm glad I showed up too. Ellie ran over, cookie crumbs on her face. Dad, Jordan's going to teach me how to write code. Can I learn code? Ryan laughed. We'll talk about it. That means yes, right? That means we'll talk about it. Ellie sighed dramatically, but was already running back to Jordan, who was sitting at a laptop looking patient and amused. Sophie watched her go. You know, I think she's going to be just fine. Yeah, Ryan said. I think so too. The party wound down around 8. Ryan gathered Ellie, who was riding a sugar high and talking at approximately 90 miles per hour about cookies and code and something Jordan had said about dragons. They said goodbye to Sophie, who hugged them both and told Ellie she was welcome back anytime. On the drive home, Ellie fell asleep in the back seat, crashed hard from the sugar rush. Ryan carried her upstairs and tucked her in without waking her, pulling her purple jacket off carefully and draping it over her chair. He stood there for a moment, watching her sleep, thinking about how far they'd come. 3 months ago, she'd been a kid who thought her dad's work was more important than she was. Now she was a kid who went to office parties and learned about code and ate too many cookies without worrying that asking for things was asking for too much. That shift hadn't happened overnight. It had happened in small moments, pancake breakfasts, park visits, promises kept instead of broken. Ryan's phone buzzed. A text from Sophie. Thank you for coming tonight. It meant a lot to the team. And to me. He typed back. Thanks for inviting us. The offer still stands, you know. If you ever want more work. On your terms. Ryan looked at his sleeping daughter. At the apartment that was too small but felt like home. At the life he'd built from the wreckage of his old one. I'll think about it, he replied. And he meant it. Not as a deflection. As an honest possibility. Because the work with Sophie had taught him something important. That it was possible to do meaningful work without being consumed by it. The balance wasn't about choosing between your career and your family. It was about building a life where both could exist without one destroying the other. He still didn't have all the answers, still made mistakes, still had moments where he questioned every decision he'd made. But that was fine. That was being human. The next morning, Ryan woke to Ellie jumping on his bed. Dad, wake up. It's Saturday. He opened one eye. Why are you awake? It's barely 7. We're going to the park, remember? You promised. I promised? Last night, when I was eating my cookie, you said we'd go to the park today. Ryan had zero memory of this conversation, but it sounded like something he would have agreed to while watching Ellie demolish sugar. Okay, Bug, let me make coffee first. Can I have hot chocolate? You had enough sugar last night to power a small city. Please? Ryan looked at her hopeful face and sighed. Fine. 1 cup, small cup. Yes! They went to the kitchen together. Ryan made coffee and hot chocolate while Ellie chattered about Jordan and code and whether dragons could learn to program computers. It was nonsense, but it was happy nonsense, the kind that filled the apartment with noise and life. After breakfast, they walked to the park. The weather was cold but clear, the kind of winter morning where the sun made everything look sharper. Ellie ran ahead like always, making a beeline for the swings. Ryan followed at his usual pace, hands in his pockets, breathing in air that didn't smell like coffee or stress or any of the things that used to define his mornings. A figure was sitting on their usual bench. Sophie. She looked up as he approached, smiling slightly. Hey, what are you doing here? Same thing you are. Taking a morning walk. Happened to end up at this park. She glanced at Ellie on the swings. Pure coincidence. Ryan sat down beside her. Pure coincidence. Okay, maybe I remembered you mentioned this place, and maybe I wanted to see if you'd be here. Why? Sophie was quiet for a moment. Because I wanted to say thank you. Properly. Not at an office party or over text. Just thank you. For saving my company. For showing me how to be better. For being honest when everyone else was just telling me what I wanted to hear. You already thanked me. I know. But I don't think you really heard it. She turned to face him. You changed my life, Ryan. I was heading toward a cliff and you pulled me back. Not just with the technical stuff, with the other stuff, the important stuff. Ryan didn't know what to say, so he just said, You would have figured it out eventually. Maybe, but I'm glad I didn't have to do it alone. They sat in silence for a while, watching Ellie swing higher and higher, her laughter carrying across the playground. Can I ask you something? Sophie said. Sure. Do you ever regret it, walking away from the big opportunities, turning down the corporate ladder, all of it? Ryan thought about that, about the job he'd quit at 4 a.m, about the projects he'd turned down, about the version of himself that had measured worth in titles and salaries and hours worked. No, he said finally, I don't regret it, because I got this instead. He gestured at the playground, at Ellie, who was now hanging upside down from the monkey bars despite his repeated warnings about head injuries. You got a 6-year-old with a death wish? Ryan laughed. I got a kid who's happy, who isn't afraid to ask for things, who knows her dad will show up when he says he will. He paused. That's worth more than any job. Sophie nodded slowly. I'm starting to understand that. Yeah? Yeah, I took last weekend off. Completely off. No phone, no laptop, just me and some books and a lot of terrible reality TV. She smiled. It was great. Look at you becoming a functional human being. Learning from the best. Ellie ran over, breathless. Dad, can Sophie play with us? Ryan looked at Sophie. Can the pancake lady play with us? Sophie stood up. The pancake lady would love to play with you. They spent the next hour on the playground. Sophie pushed Ellie on the swings. They played a complicated game involving the slide and a dragon that Ellie invented on the spot. They climbed on things they were probably too old to climb on and didn't care. It was simple. Easy. It was exactly what life was supposed to be. Around noon, Ellie started complaining that she was hungry. How are you hungry? Ryan asked. You ate an entire stack of pancakes 3 hours ago. I'm a growing person. Growing persons need food. Growing people, Ryan corrected. That's what I said. Sophie laughed. There's a diner 2 blocks from here. My treat? Ryan looked at Ellie, who was nodding enthusiastically. Okay, he said. But we're splitting the check. Deal. They walked to the diner together, Ellie between them, holding both their hands and swinging her arms like she was trying to take flight. The diner was warm and crowded, smelling like coffee and bacon. They squeezed into a booth, Ellie insisting on sitting next to Sophie. They ordered food, talked about nothing important. Ellie told Sophie about school and her teacher and a boy named Marcus who ate glue. Sophie told Ellie about the new system going live and how it was named after a dragon, which made Ellie's eyes go wide. Ryan sat there eating mediocre eggs and drinking decent coffee and realized he was happy. Not the temporary happiness that came from solving a hard problem or hitting a deadline. The deeper kind. The kind that settled into your bones and stayed. After lunch, they walked back to the park to get Ryan's car. Ellie was getting tired, her steps slowing, the sugar crash imminent. Sophie walked with them to the parking lot. "This was nice," she said. "Yeah," Ryan agreed. "It was. We should do it again sometime." "We should." Ellie tugged Ryan's hand. "Can Sophie come to our next Dragon game night?" Ryan looked at Sophie. "We play every Friday, if you're interested." Sophie smiled. "I'm very interested." Fair warning, Ellie takes it extremely seriously. "I would expect nothing less." They said goodbye. Sophie headed toward her car, and Ryan buckled Ellie into the back seat. She was asleep before they left the parking lot. Ryan drove home slowly, taking the long way, watching the city move around him. Families walking dogs, couples holding hands, people living their lives in small, ordinary ways. He used to think ordinary was boring, something to escape, something that meant you hadn't accomplished enough. Now he understood that ordinary was the whole point, that the small moments were the ones that mattered, that building a life worth living wasn't about achievements or accolades. It was about showing up, being present, choosing what mattered and sticking with it even when it was hard. Back at the apartment, Ryan carried Ellie to her bed. She stirred as he set her down. "Dad?" "Yeah, Bug?" "Today was a good day." "Yeah, it was." "Can we have more good days?" Ryan brushed hair from her forehead. "We're going to try, Bug. We're going to try." She smiled and drifted back to sleep. Ryan stood there for a moment, watching her breathe, feeling the weight of responsibility and love and everything that came with being someone's entire world. It was heavy, but it was good heavy, the kind worth carrying. He went to the kitchen and made himself another cup of coffee, sat at the table and looked out the window at the street below, at the ordinary Saturday afternoon unfolding in ordinary ways. His phone was on the counter, silent. No emergency calls. No crisis messages. No deadline screaming for his attention. Just quiet. Ryan had spent years running from quiet, filling every moment with work and noise and anything that made him feel important, necessary, worth something. But sitting there in his small apartment, drinking mediocre coffee while his daughter slept in the next room, Ryan realized he'd been looking for worth in all the wrong places. It wasn't in the code he wrote, or the systems he fixed, or the problems he solved. It was in the promise he kept, the pancakes he made. The moments he showed up when showing up was all that mattered. That was the work that counted, the work that built something real. His phone buzzed, a text from Sophie. "Thank you for today." "I needed that more than I realized." Ryan smiled and typed back, "Me too." Another message came through. "See you Friday for Dragon game night?" "See you Friday," Ryan confirmed. He set the phone down and finished his coffee, thinking about the week ahead, the work he'd do, the time he'd spend with Ellie, the balance he'd built that wasn't perfect but was his. 3 months ago, he'd been a guy sitting in the dark at 4 a.m, choosing between his daughter and his job and hating himself for how hard the choice felt. Now he was a guy who'd learned that the choice wasn't actually that hard, that the answer had been there all along, that sometimes the bravest thing you could do was walk away from what everyone else said mattered and choose what mattered to you. Outside, the afternoon was fading into evening. The sun was dropping lower, painting everything in shades of gold. Ryan stood up and checked on Ellie one more time. She was still asleep, arms wrapped around her pillow, face peaceful. He went back to the kitchen and started thinking about dinner. Something simple, something they could make together when she woke up. Because that's what mattered now. Not the grand gestures or the big wins or the impressive achievements. Just the small moments. The ordinary days. The life he'd built from the wreckage of his old one. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't smooth. It wasn't the life he'd planned. But it was his. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything.